Hey, y'all, welcome back in. Finally had a chance to settle down here and collect my thoughts about the game against Auburn and what happened on the Plains. Now, one thing we can say for sure, it is now October, and these Georgia Bulldogs are 5-0, 2-0 in SEC play. There is no complaining about that. Any win is a good win. With all that said, there were a few things that really stood out to me about this game yesterday. The first thing, and my thoughts are out of order a little bit, but I'll get through them all. And the first thing that jumps out to me was, and this probably has a lot to do with who has moved on to the league and just who's not in the program anymore, and the fact that this roster overall is fairly young. So on the whole, I think one of the things the Dogs are missing this year is that edge, that nasty, right? That I'm going to put your nose in the dirt kind of attitude. We saw it with Broderick Jones last year, right? We've seen it with Jalen Carter. We've seen it with some of the other wonderful players that were on this defense the last couple of years that aren't here now. Now, that's in no way an excuse. Georgia recruits at an extremely high level, and they have players. But they are a team that has won the national championship 2 years in a row. And when Coach Kirby Smart talked about complacency, it is a very real struggle to battle against that every day. You couple that with guys that are still learning the Georgia way, trying to reach the Georgia standard, where they're still thinking about a lot of things. And in many cases, they're still young players learning on the fly. You roll all that together, and it's understandable how you might not have that same edge that you've had the last couple of years. I'm not saying it's a death knell for this team or that they can't achieve all their goals. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying, though, is that to achieve the kind of goals that they want to achieve, they're going to have to look to guys like Malachi Starks. They're going to have to look to guys like Cedric Van Pran. Guys that have been there, done that, shown this edge, and they're going to have to get pissed off and want to meet them at the front of the line for battle. They can get there. For some guys, that comes easy. It's natural. For other guys, you kind of have to play your way into it. So whatever the situation is for individual players on the team, I think that as a whole, this group is still finding their way in that regard, and they're going to have to get there. I hope they get there soon. I just know that I can't write them off because I understand the process, but I know that I want them to get there sooner rather than later. And when they do, that's when they can let their natural athletic ability take over, and everything happens faster. They look more nasty, more dominant. So I'm hoping we get there sooner rather than later. There, like I said earlier, there are no bad wins, but there are victories where you have to reevaluate where you are in a season. Like I said, there's nothing you can do to take away what this team is. They are 5-0 and 2-0 in SEC play. This was a hell of a win. It was a great win over a longtime rival on the road. It was a bit of a show-me game. The thing is that unless you are inside the Georgia ecosystem and have a more full understanding of what it is you're watching, that show me might look a lot different to people outside that ecosystem. What did Georgia show you? They showed you that they went on the road, they got a nice win over a conference opponent, but then perception creeps in about who and what Auburn is, who and what Georgia is. What did we think they were coming into the season? What have we seen through 4 games? What did we expect them to do? And sometimes those expectations just completely overshadow what we know we saw. I saw several things that got my attention that need to be cleaned up. But I also know that those things have answers. I think what we all need to do, myself included, and yes, I'm including myself because I'm a fan too. On this channel, I'm here as an informed fan. And one of the things that we have to make sure we're doing is, although it's what everyone wants to do, not compare this Georgia team to either of the last 2 teams And by that, I mean, it's not the same team. Different players, new year, that's done and dusted. This is a new group of players trying to do their own thing. Now, you can compare stats and what you wish it were and things like that. But I'm just saying, last year, that offensive unit was in its third year under their offensive coordinator. 2 years ago, you had a generational defense that was, if I'm not mistaken, every player on that defense has now been drafted into the NFL. So to compare this team to either of those two teams in either of those two areas doesn't really make sense. You're certainly not comparing apples to apples. But like I said earlier, Georgia has players. I just think we need to make sure that we're looking at this team for what this team is. And this team is not as good as the 21 team. May not be as good as the 22 team. But what they are is still absolutely capable of winning an SEC championship and a national championship, regardless of how it looks right now. That win yesterday on the Plains in Auburn was what championship football teams do. Now, it's like Kirby said, good football teams don't give up 200 yards rushing. The answer is there is a direct answer to why that happened. A little film study will show it clearly. A little scheme paired with that film study, and you understand how it happens. Good teams don't turn the ball over. They don't put the ball on the ground, and that's been a problem that I've talked about before. That is something Georgia absolutely must get cleaned up. One of my takeaways from yesterday was that overall, for most of the game, I was disappointed by what I saw along the lines of scrimmage. The interior defensive line was turning their shoulders and getting pushed around a lot more than what we're used to over the last few years. So the last few years' perspective can color how we see it, as long as we remember that we are not exactly the same as we've been over the last 2-3 years. With that said, though, they must be better, especially in the middle. The anchor spots, locking it down so that our defensive ends and linebackers can do what they're supposed to do. The offensive line, especially in the run game, was underwhelming yet again. These are things that must be cleaned up if Georgia's going to get to where they want to go. Additionally, Georgia did everything that they could possibly do to help Auburn make this a 4-quarter game. Mentioned the turnovers, mentioned the lack of execution along the interior lines of scrimmage. Those are things that, against Auburn, with their struggles on offense, maybe you get away with. There will come a time when you won't. And Georgia will lose because of it. Now, I don't know when that's going to be, but a good team will make you pay. So if Georgia, again, wants to achieve their goals, that's something that has to be cleaned up. We were also reminded that having 84 on the field really matters. Really matters. I mean, I heard somebody say third down and Beck yesterday, which we'll get around to that. Carson Beck was amazing on third down yesterday for Georgia. But how about, Ladd McConkey on third down receptions? Appeared to be uncoverable. So it's good to have 84 back. And the more healthy he gets, hopefully there are no hang-ups coming off of this first action of the season. That's a good thing for the Georgia offense. Like I said earlier, maybe a couple weeks ago, we wanted to see Brock Bowers more down the field. We want to see him catching the ball further down the field. That comes from, running game, play action, and scheme. In this game, we certainly saw that. I don't have his numbers in front of me, amazingly. I don't even know how I don't have them in front of me. But he had another huge game yesterday, over almost 150 yards in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. Brock Bowers was unstoppable yesterday. I don't get tired of talking about Brock, but he's so good that to talk about him all the time seems like you're just wasting your breath. Everybody knows he's the man. Now, to put a little bit of a positive look at what we saw yesterday, again, like I said, Georgia did what championship teams do yesterday. They went on the road to a challenging environment. They did everything they could to beat themselves. And when it was winning time, they still found a way to get it done. How about this note? Carson Beck making his first road start in the SEC and quite possibly the toughest environment to play in the conference. A Carson Beck-led offense had 0 false starts yesterday at Auburn. They also had 0 delays of the game. No penalties from the mechanization standpoint of Georgia's offense. Did I also mention I think Beck was like 8 of 10 on third down? Dot after dot after dot. That young man grew up yesterday. You could see it. Players can say whatever they want to say, but if you've ever been in a locker room, until somebody goes and does it and you see them do it and they earn it like a battlefield promotion of sorts, it's not the same. Georgia players could have said, yeah, he's our guy. We trust him. All 100% faith in what he's going to do for us. That's fine. But yesterday you could see Carson Beck's teammates in that third and fourth quarter when he had to make key throws into tight windows, keep drives alive, make a play, and he stepped right up and did it, handled everything just like you hope he would. You could see him in real time winning his teammates over. There's no question CB15 is the guy. So you can just shove all that stuff about playing another quarterback and all that other stuff that some of the Dog Nation wants to talk about in a locker somewhere. This is your guy. Saddle up and ride. If you're a Dog fan, this is your guy. This is your guy. The team has chosen Carson Beck at this point. It's just like they said with Stetson a couple years ago. That's the one thing you kept hearing is the locker room loves him. They love that dude. That's where we're going with Carson Beck right now. He's winning this locker room. Does it mean he's going to be perfect every time out? No. But does it mean that those dudes are going to fight for him and stand with him and try to make plays for him? Yes, absolutely they are. And we saw that yesterday. That is huge. Now, a lot of people were talking about the run defense, and it made me unhappy, to say the least. We hadn't seen Georgia give up over 200 yards rushing in a couple years. And then yesterday, it seemed like that's all that was happening. It seemed like somebody was always leaking to the edge. But there's more to it than meets the eye. There always is. The run fits were bad by young players and by veterans. Young players, maybe I'm thinking 33 on that long run by Peyton Thorne. Bad angle, bad eye discipline. Let himself get leveraged. Veteran players, 23, 2, 18, even 24 and 22, had bad run fits yesterday. Not collapsing down, taking bad angles, not filling an alley, not aggressively coming up to play the run when you're certain at this point that it is the run. All that stuff added together gets you what you saw yesterday. There were instances where our edge player, our outside linebacker, Marvin Jones Jr., was doing his job, doing a great job, setting the edge, holding the point of attack, spilling the play to the outside. Then a bad angle from Tyke Smith, bad angle or a slow reaction from Smile Munden. You end up with a big run that spills to the outside and gets down the sideline. I mean, it is what it is. The good thing is, all of this can be corrected. So moving forward, and you know the coaches are going to coach it up. They're going to point to it as a teaching point. So moving forward, is it going to get better? I have faith that it will. But we have to see it. The run game, when you have the quarterback involved, is a challenge. But it's not the kind of thing that Georgia hasn't done a better job of in the past. They simply didn't do their job enough yesterday. Often enough, well enough yesterday. So they got to get to work. The good news is it can be improved. I believe it will. But we'll see. We're all going to learn together. A couple of things here to finish on too. Back on the offensive side of the ball. When it was winning time, a good play designer, a good play caller, will not allow his best weapon to be taken away. Whether it's through scheme, whether it's through play call. You're going to find a way to put the ball on your best player. When it was winning time yesterday, that is exactly what we saw. Mike Bobo called the plays, leaned on the schemes that he felt good were going to be open against what is a pretty good Auburn secondary. Maybe one of the best we're going to see the rest of the way down this regular season, honestly. Bobo called the plays, and then we saw Carson Beck put the ball right on 19. Dot after dot after dot. Big gains down the field. Once you put it in 19's hands, good things happen. We saw that as if we didn't know. Again, a good play designer, play caller will not allow his best weapon to be taken away from him, and that's exactly what we saw yesterday. Bobo knew who to go to make his plays. Beck executed it. Brock made it happen. That's how Georgia won the game at the end of the game yesterday. That's what happened in the fourth quarter. They rode their horse, if you will. And as much as I felt bad about what I saw from the offensive line yesterday in the run game, I think, and I've been frustrated with him. I've been disappointed earlier in the year as well in what I've seen as far as that edge, that nasty, that move a body because, by God, I'm going to attitude. I don't want to just move you. I want to punish you. I mean, you see it in flashes with this group, but it is inconsistent at best. And as much as I've banged on them for it, yesterday at winning time, Carson Beck was clean. He had perfect pocket after perfect pocket. He could stand tall like the 6-foot big-armed quarterback that he is and whip it down the field to find 19 or whoever he was looking for. For everything I've said about that O-line, they did their job down the stretch right there. Their pass pro, very, very solid on that final drive for sure, but especially on those, the entire second half, the third quarter, the fourth quarter, as they were putting together those long drives. So there are your flowers, O-line. Get to work. Be more consistent. That's what we need to see. And to the point of long drives after long drives, we should recognize what a great job Georgia did yesterday in executing those long drives, because that is very, very hard to do, especially on the road with crowd noise and everything else that's going on. But what Georgia's going to have to do to ultimately be the team they want to be is start to hit those plays that they're missing, that they're leaving on the field, that are certainly, to the naked eye, guaranteed touchdowns. Beck missed Oscar Delp yesterday on what should have been a huge gain or a touchdown. That's not the first one we've missed this year. I can remember when Matthew Stafford was in Athens, I used to think and tell everybody that I was around, I'm like, I love Matt. Boy can't throw a deep ball for anything. Time after time, I watched him overthrow guys early in his career. And the longer he was there and the more he worked on it, he got better at it. But right now, whatever the reason, whether it's just too much arm or you're getting in a hurry, whatever it is, Beck is missing. Maybe Delp wasn't exactly right. Maybe he didn't bend his route enough. I mean, I don't know exactly how they coached it right there, but I know that every ball down the field doesn't have to be a rope. Put a little loft under it, let them run under it, that kind of thing. So that's something that Georgia has to clean up and start to hit on. And if they do, when they do, a lot of this anxiety that you, I, and the rest of Dog Nation feels about these closer games will start to ease up. It may even evaporate. Because without question, this team has dudes. And they learned a lot about themselves yesterday, and we learned a lot about them. But this is what football is. I really think 65-7 has ruined most of us. It's not that easy. And what we saw yesterday from this Georgia team, throw what you thought you knew and your expectations or what you are comfortable with seeing or used to seeing out the window. Just address this team for what it is. Recognize that they have warts and things to improve on, but understand that they're doing the hard work to get that done, and they do have a very talented roster to get it done with. So moving forward, as we were reminded yesterday by the plays that 24 made at the end of the game to shut things down for Auburn, when we saw 19 do what he did, when we saw Dejan Edwards get in the end zone again, when we saw Carson Beck grow up right in front of our eyes, there are players, there are dudes on this team. We have to trust them. We have to trust that the coach is going to keep coaching them up, and they got to go handle their business next week. I'm going to be right here cheering Go Dogs. I hope and trust that you're going to be doing the same. Until then, Go Dogs.
Told them, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.